Hey, gang, we are I guess we're actually right at the top of the hour. We are going to give it just a minute for people to gather. We've got a big group of people already on, but I can see the number just rapidly growing. So we are going to go until 10:01 on Pacific Coast. I know Denise and I have had this big argument about what time the real time is. And since I'm hosting it, I guess I get to say it is 10:01. And I don't know what happened. My screen, I had this all so good. And you've been fiddling and everything has been perfect. And all of a sudden, my screen is just a little weird. There we go. So we are 10:01. We have a great number of people on here. I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. My partner in crime here is my very good buddy, Denise Boudreau-Scott. She is the president of Drive, and she's a transformer of company cultures, and she works with cutting-edge senior living organizations on recruitment and retention strategies. And so by focusing on their unique attributes as an organization, she helps them use those things to really improve the workplace culture, which makes it a better place to work for both employees and for leaders. And she actually knows what this is all about because she used to be a nursing home administrator and assisted living administrator who used to run around begging staff and promising her firstborn child to anyone who would pick up an extra shift. And I think what really happened was that nobody really wanted her firstborn, so they'd say yes to you, right? So I'm really excited about doing this. I'm going to give a couple more housekeeping details, and then we will, Denise, you can kick off. So the first thing is that we are recording this. We're going to go 29 minutes because we've got this very tight time frame we're going to do. Feel free to ask questions. We'll answer all of those at the end of the session. The recording will be made available to you, as will the slide deck. So we'll send out this afternoon or tomorrow links to those things. And in addition, you're going to get a free tool that Drive has put together for everybody who is attending live. And so that will come out to you. And again, all that will come out to you either today or tomorrow. And so with that, Denise, you're on.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works as it should.
Yeah. So I'm actually want to do one more quick thing. You will see Denise and I, our faces on the right-hand side, and that is something you can actually change. You can shrink us all the way down. You can move us around, and so you've got a whole bunch of options of what you can do with that. So just to make it easy to watch. So.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here. And Steve, do you know that is actually true, what you said about running around and promising people my firstborn child? When I was an administrator, I would have this big white binder, and when I got off the elevator with it, people would know I was looking for somebody to work an extra shift. And then before I could even say a word, they'd be yelling no. And thankfully, no one actually ever took me up on using that binder or taking my kids, using the binder, taking one of my kids, because I have twins, and it would have been really hard to figure out which one to give away. Those guys, by the way, just celebrated their 18th birthday this week. So Steve, what if all we think about the staffing crisis is wrong? That it's not all doom and gloom, that it actually could be a real opportunity for some organizations to shine. And it seems sort of crazy, I know, but I want you to stick with me. Because what we know is cutting-edge organizations can use the staffing crisis to stand out from the pack. The pack being leaders who are running ragged, trying to fix a problem that they don't truly understand. But those organizations that understand what the real problem is are brave enough to face it, and those are the ones who are going to succeed. And we don't have to be bowing down. And I know you and I talk about this a lot. So all those other employers out there like Starbucks and Chick-fil-A and McDonald's or Targets, when it comes to recruiting staff, because each of you on this call can compete with these big dogs for the best people. My New Yorker's coming out, the big dogs. And so if you don't believe me, I want you to look at one of our clients, Roundtree Gardens, who competes with Disneyland to get team members. Disney. Now, can you imagine competing with the happiest place on earth for your staff, going head to head with the most powerful mouse in the world? Well, Roundtree did it and they won. Their 90-day turnover dropped from 25.6 to 4.5 in 1 year. And now I want you to see their referrals increased dramatically in that same time period. So they had their employee referrals really ramp up, but you also see they dropped off. Why? Because if you don't have any open positions, if people aren't leaving, you don't need no referrals if you got no open positions, right? So these results really require, though, a very radically different approach. And if you're not up for this challenge, I want to tell you, step aside because other leaders are. And we've clearly struck a nerve today with this webinar. There's hundreds of people on this call, even with the short lead time that we gave you, even with it being vacation season. Why? Because like you, they don't know exactly what to do about the quote unquote staffing crisis. Like you, they can't stand throwing money out the window every month on endless overtime and agency. They know ultimately, or perhaps even right now, they won't be able to care for new residents or patients because there isn't enough staff to support them. And besides a drain on your bottom line, honestly, most importantly, lack of staff is undoubtedly having an incredibly negative impact on the people that serve and the reputation in your community. So here's what I promised to cover today: why you have a staffing crisis, and 3 things that you can do about it. So you're going to learn about my biggest discovery at the end of our time together. The discovery, really, that after all these years I spent in the field as an administrator in ED, I wish I would have known back then. It's too late for me, but it's not too late for you all. So I'm going to stay on the line and take any questions, as Steve said, that you might have, or answer any questions that you throw into the chat as we go along. But let's get started. The real reason you have a staffing crisis, Steve, you know how to do a drum roll?
Not
Oh, very good, very
bad,
good.
not bad.
The real reason you have a staffing crisis is because you're losing too many people because of your culture. And you don't have to be Captain Obvious here to realize that if you stop losing so many people, that you won't have so many people to replace. And I'm going to say this in a different way. The real reason you have a staffing crisis is because you have a culture crisis. And yes, I know the Department of Labor Statistics or Bureau of Labor Statistics or whatever it's called, that government agency. And I know the unemployment rate numbers that all these different states, people share with me all the time, the unemployment rate in their state. And I know you've heard those numbers a gazillion times. So I'm not going to bother going through all those with you and bother them. So why do I share, though, the news that losing less people would mean less of a staffing crisis? Why do I share it with you like it's like this earth-shattering news? I share it with you because way too often I hear people say things like, our turnover isn't so bad, it's average. Whatever average means to them. For some people it's 40%, for some people it's 50%. I've had some people tell me 100% is the norm and it's average, which makes my hair stand up, which it is anyway with all the humidity in New Jersey today.
Doesn't make my hair stand up, though.
You don't have that problem, huh?
That's right.
But average, right? Average. The sweet nectar of unforgettable employers everywhere. It really seduces even the most well-intentioned organizations. Average turnover. It's so attainable. It's so within our reach. But one thing I don't do, and you certainly shouldn't do on this call, is deal in average. The average turnover in our field, and I know, Steve, you and I have discussed this lots of times, it is not acceptable. But I'm expecting the people on this webinar know that already because you're on this webinar. And you, my friends, are the exact kind of people that I want to work with. You have the guts to do what it takes to stand out. You want to be the head, not the tail. So let's talk about the 3 things that you can do about your staffing crisis, which really, again, is your culture crisis. And I love this mug. Embracing mediocrity. Some leaders are using sneaky ways to take this huge problem that we have with staffing and using it to their best advantage. Now, it's the rare few leaders that refuse, though, to embrace mediocrity. The typical leader? Well, the typical leader is out there throwing everything at their staffing problem. They're trying anything, huge sign-on bonuses, referral bonuses. They're getting certifications that they know deep down they don't even need, but others are doing it. So why not join the pack? The pack that you don't want to be part of. Steve, did your mama ever tell you, don't be part of the pack? Not to follow the pack? So I got more the talk about how the money doesn't grow on trees. So while the typical leader is running around like a chicken without a head, trying to find answers to all their staffing woes without even really knowing what the true issues are, you can be strategically approaching your challenges with information that gives you hard facts about what the problem truly is. The best weapon to slay your culture culture crisis, I should say, is hard data. So begin to take a strategic approach to your issues by looking at your data. You would never ignore your census numbers. You would never ignore your P&L numbers, and you wouldn't be in business too long if you did. But yet, the typical leader rarely scrutinizes turnover data with the same fine-tooth comb that they're looking at all the other data in their organization. Trust me on this one, and I know, Steve, you and I have talked about this point often too. I see this all the time. Even leaders who have spent thousands and thousands of dollars with these sophisticated systems, there's people saying, yes, we look at our information, but really they aren't doing it too well. And assumptions are made about what's happening, and even more assumptions are made about why it's happening. So look at your numbers for overall annual turnover. Look at the numbers for turnover 30 days, for turnover 90 days, whatever makes most sense for your organization. At one of our clients, which has multiple sites, we found that their cooks were quitting within their first 10 days. That's the highest point of people leaving, with cooks leaving, was 10 days. With that info, you can figure out why that might be happening. That's, what's going on that's driving them out so quickly. Maybe they've never worked in senior living. Maybe they didn't realize all the regulations we're burdened with. Maybe the food that they're cooking is really different from what they're used to. But without knowing that data that they're leaving within 10 days, there's nothing you can do. You don't understand the problem. So now that you have some numbers, let's look at what else you can do to keep your people and attract some new ones. And remember I told you earlier about the typical leader, that she's running around throwing programs at problem that she doesn't understand. I want that to be a wake-up call to you, because you, instead of throwing programs at an unknown problem, you are going to use cold, hard data, facts, to develop a step-by-step strategic plan, not chance, to improve your culture. A deliberate approach to really transform your organization from inside out. And it's going to have an immediate impact on your current employees. It's going to have an impact on those A players that you want to keep. And it's also going to dramatically increase the people who are attracted to working for you. What I dream of is for all of you to have a line of applicants that are around the building, kind of like, when they release the new iPhone. I've never done it. You ever sleep outside waiting for an iPhone to be released? Steve, I don't know if you're, or sneakers, probably Chucks maybe. But I want that line around the building of people waiting to apply. What I don't want you to do is copy lame best practices. And yes, even an awesome idea can be lame if it doesn't fit what your unique organization needs. What you must do to keep your A players and really to help you attract new people, the right people, is to be intentional about your culture. Because, and this is one of my favorite quotes, because whether you like it or not, the culture of your organization is being defined by the worst behavior that you are willing to tolerate in your organization. You cannot not have a culture. You can't not have a culture. It's being shaped every single day, every single interaction, whether you want it to be or not. And if you aren't providing the mold for your culture to be shaped in, if you aren't providing that way that your culture should look, it's taking on a life of its own. Your greatest job, numero uno, as a leader, is for you to ensure that your culture is not left to chance as just some random afterthought. That's what typical leaders do. They throw retention and recruitment programs together. They wonder why they don't sustain. They wonder why they keep losing people. They wonder why they can't attract the right people. And then they blame, cue the dramatic music, the staffing crisis. It's not the staffing crisis.
So
it's that they're focusing.
Denise, I would say one thing. I would say one thing. Google still gets something like 10,000 applicants a month in the middle of the staffing crisis. And we could do that.
Yes. Yes. There's certain airlines that get it, and there's certain airlines that don't, right? And even fast food, you and I know, we visited In-N-Out Burger, right? They're getting tons. It's harder to work there than it is at Harvard. When they open up a new store, it's harder to get a job at In-N-Out than it is to get it into Harvard University. And yet there's people crying, fast food organizations crying for staff. You got it. So it's not the staffing crisis, it's that we're focusing on the wrong things. We're using Band-Aids instead of what's causing the bleed, right? We're not looking for the bleed, we're using Band-Aids. Using culture is finally going to allow us to solve what once seemed unsolvable. Using culture to address turnover issues is what we at Drive use with all of your clients. I'm going to show you one earlier, and I'm going to show you another one now, because this is just a different organization in Rhode Island focused on being strategic and intentional in its approach to culture. And what they did is they subsequently reduced their turnover by, you can see it there, 69% to 31%. That was first quarter 2018 to 2019. Why do we look at first quarter? Because as I see it in organizations all the time, there's some seasonal differences with turnover. So we want to be comparing apples to apples. We don't want to be looking at one season from one year and one season from another year, right? So this organization, same quarter, different years, dropped their turnover, focusing on culture, 69% to 31% there. And they really drove also their 90-day retention up. And they used culture to do this. So they drove their 90-day retention, you'll see, from 59% all the way up to 71%, right? Over a quarter of 9 months, 3 quarters, driving their 90-day retention up. And as retention increases, Captain Obvious would tell you that your recruitment problems decrease. And if you're creating a culture where people want to stay, you're going to naturally be creating a place where people want to come to work when you do have an open position. And we see that all the time with our clients. And so remember we talked earlier about the danger of making assumptions about what's happening and why it's happening. When you collect and scrutinize your data, you're going to know what's happening. And the next step that's going to take away or take you to is using this information to be intentional about your next steps, about your plan. Take a look at what's happening. And I'll share with you just in a minute how you can know why it's happening. But take a look what's happening. Remember that data. Work with your leadership team to begin to develop a step-by-step, strategic, intentional approach to address it. Do not just throw programs at your staffing issues. It will not work, and it will fall apart quickly. So hypothetically now, you have your turnover numbers. You've begun working on an intentional plan to remedy your staffing issues with your leadership team. But hold it right there. This is where typical leaders muscle ahead and they think they're about to fix a problem. This is the pivotal moment where most leaders invest more time, more money, more resources to fix their staffing woes. But there's a huge missing piece of the puzzle. The missing piece of the puzzle that's going to make it impossible for you to solve your staffing issues for the long term. And that missing piece is the why. Why is the bleed happening? Why is recruiting the right people such an insurmountable obstacle? Say that 3 times fast. It's the rare leader that takes the time to understand the why. People aren't even aware that they can even truly understand the why. But that why is your culture. So the answer to understanding why people are leaving and why they aren't coming is your culture. And culture is really just the shared values, the behavioral norms, and that's just a fancy way of saying how we do things around here in our organization. And you can measure this with a simple tool. Yes, you can measure culture. I know you probably, to me, when I first time I heard about it, it blew my mind. And when I first learned about it, actually, was from a consultant that works with real high-end hotels, the Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton, and I was blown away. And I thought, where has this tool been all my life? Where was it when I was an administrator and an executive director? It would have made my life a lot easier. And the next thing I thought is, I must bring this to senior living because it's what we've been needing for years. And you want to know the neat thing about this tool? And I'll show it to you in just a moment. It gives you, with hard numbers, data, facts, the why all that turnover is happening. The why, the real reasons. People aren't choosing you over Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or Walmart, or as you said, Steve, Google, right? One CFO that we worked with, magical, and I love that. When's the last time you heard a CFO describe anything having to do with culture and the word magical? And he meant it as a compliment, by the way. I should be clear on that. So you must measure your culture if you want to attract and keep the best people fully engaged in your organization. If not, you are just one of those typical leaders tossing fixes at an unknown issue and perpetuating that waste of time and money and resources. But imagine being able to get a diagnosis of your organization's culture by asking your employees just 3 simple questions. And that's exactly what our culture values assessment tool does. And while we're introducing you and most people in senior living to it for the first time probably, it's actually been around for 20 years and it's used around the globe, over 6,000 organizations. And the tool provides a deeper understanding of what motivates your team. We all want to know that, right? An objective diagnosis, remember data, hard numbers of what is and is not working, and actionable insights that you have a clear path forward. Simply, what it does is it means no more throwing programs at problems and hoping they stick. So you're probably curious how it measures culture and what are those 3 questions? And here they are. Your personal values, the current organizational values that are being lived. And by the way, this is not what's in the lobby on your wall, but is really being experienced every day by the people that are in your organization every day. And finally, it asks people, what are the values or behaviors that you want to see? What are the things that you want to see, your desired culture? And from all that info, you'll find out what's important to people, how they experience the culture now, how they'd like it to improve for tomorrow. And you're going to learn, and I think this is one of the most amazing things with this tool, is you learn what factors are getting in the way of people doing their job. What is the stuff that they're wasting energy on? You'll see what keeps the people you serve even from really experiencing everything that they should be when they're getting services from your organization. The potential of your services. Because ultimately, I know you, I know me, and I know probably everybody on this call, we're all here for the same reason, to create incredible experiences for the people that we serve. Through this tool, you will finally know the why behind all of your recruitment and retention woes. And let me show you exactly what I'm talking about here. And so this may make your eyeballs bleed, Steve, I don't know, but it's confusing. I'm gonna walk through it and it'll come back to you. So why this crazy picture? Because all people, individuals in our world, organizations, grow and develop in 7 stages. And these stages are the motivating forces in all that we do as humans. Yes, even me, even you, Steve, everybody listening to this call, this is what motivates us. And if this seems vaguely familiar, it's because you probably learned about it in high school or college. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the culture values assessment that we use here at Drive connects the values and behaviors that staff choose to these 7 levels. And that might seem confusing, like why bother, until you realize people can't move to higher levels, such as making a difference, or even trust, which is like a level 5 value, if they're stuck on the bottom in survival mode. If I'm worrying about if I have a job or not, it's really to figure out how I can reach these higher level values. Now, most organizations kind of have a smattering of values on all these different levels, and I'm really excited to show you a real example from an organization in just 1 second. But I wanted you to have this quick background first before we looked at a real example. And in fact, using this tool, we talked to a client that had completed the values assessment just last week, and they realized that they were working on some high-level values, but they hadn't been able to reach them yet, and they couldn't figure out why until we went through this assessment. And all of a sudden, it became really clear that they were wasting time and resources right now on something up here that was not attainable at this moment. And so now they're reprioritizing what they'll get as a result to move to that higher level, but it's going to be with much more intention and a lot more sustainability. And what we've seen in the organizations that we've used this with is that this information that's below the surface, yet it's having a tremendous impact on our turnover and recruitment outcomes. Your turnover is sort of the top there, the outcomes you actually see, while the culture values assessment is all the stuff underneath, creating the top of that iceberg. So here it is, the tool that I've been dying to show you. First, you see there's personal values there. And these are the personal values that people chose in the organization. And I'll show you how to read this first copy. You'll be an expert to do the rest. In total, about 144 staff members took this assessment. So caring was chosen by 83 of those staff members. It's a level 2 value. And the letter R that you see there next to number 2 stands for relational. It's a relationship-based value. It takes more than one person to care, right? I care about Steve. I hope he cares about me. That's where the R comes from. And you'll see a few down is honesty. Honesty is a level 5 value. It has an I there because it's an individual value. I'm honest, or Steve is honest. You on this call are honest. A few more down, you're going to see making a difference, which is what 48 people voted for. That's a level 6, and it's got an S there because that's a societal-based value. And so what stood out to me when I saw these results was, wow, these people are working in the right field. Right? You look at these lists of personal values, they belong working in senior living. And this is also a group of people that really treasures relationships. They don't want to be working alone in a cubicle. So you could see there's 6 of their top values there were relationship-based. Again, that's a win for senior living, right? People who want to build relationships. These are people that clearly do not belong working at Chick-fil-A or Target or Starbucks. Next, we have the current culture values, and this is what's below. Remember that water I just showed you in that iceberg? This is the information that you don't know if you're part of that typical leader pack. You can see teamwork at 54 votes, and it's a level 4 value, as an R because it's relational in nature. And you might be wondering, why the white dots? So those are potentially limiting values, values that could be working against the organization, like job insecurity and blame. And the O, so we have the I, the R, the S, the O means organizational. So for example, cost reduction is an organizational value that is being shown in the current culture. And finally, we have the desired culture. And this is what people want to be seeing lived every single day in their organization. And if you're asking why there are more than 10 words in each one of these columns when they're only supposed to choose their top 10 values, it's because some of them had a tie. You'll see these last words, the last 5 words there on the desired culture were all tied at 40, so they all showed up there. So I promised you 3 things that you can do to solve your staffing crisis. So first, I want you to figure out through your data, what actually is happening, right? You might think you know what's happening, but really take a deep dive into that data. And then I want you to commit to a strategic and intentional approach with your leadership team, not just throwing programs around, right? Intentional and strategic with your leadership team. And the next step, I want you to ask, is there a way to measure and understand the values and culture of your organization? Because remember, whether you like it or not, your culture is getting shaped every single day, every single moment, every single interaction between team members, with residents, with family members, with clients. And so when I was working on this latest offering, which I'll tell you about in just a second, I realized that if you have no way of measuring culture, there's no way of knowing what will work and what won't. This knowledge alone can change the direction of your organization, honestly, forever. If not, it's the same as you not feeling good and you walk into a CVS and you buy the first medication you see. And you don't actually know what's wrong with you. You don't know your diagnosis. So you take ear drops, but you got heartburn. It ain't going to work so well for you. When you randomly throw solutions at an unknown diagnosis, it never works. My diagnosis might be speech issues here. So we've come to the end of our magical journey, and there I go with the word magical again. It's like I work for Disney. And like all things Disney, the ending is happy ever after, if you choose to take the next step. Now let me tell you that not all souls are brave enough to take this to the next level, and that's okay. But remember what I told you about really knowing what's happening in your organization and why it's happening so you can strategically approach your turnover and recruitment issues. It takes a bit of bravery to go this route, right? To separate from that pack of typical leaders and take the road less traveled, but the rewards are great. So this is a point where you decide if you want to take action to better understand and then fix once and for all with sustainability your culture and staffing issues. I want to help you if you are the kind of leader who empathetically says, yes. At Drive, we do this work every single day because ultimately our aim is to improve senior living and aging services for both the people that live and receive services as well as the people that work in this field. We're looking for leaders who are eager to roll up their sleeves, do the hard work that needs to get done. But that may mean we're not the right fit for each other. So that's why I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why you shouldn't want to work with me. 1, you have no real interest in fixing turnover and your recruitment problems. 2, you just love, and there's lots of people like this that love the next bright, shiny thing, and you're not interested in real sustainable change. Or 3, if you're okay with average and the status quo in your organization, if those things apply, do me a favor, do you a favor, and don't bother connecting. It's fine. Use the things that you learned today to make a difference in your organization. But if you are brave enough, if you're an unconventional leader, if you're 100% committed, and you're brave enough to completely rid your organization of its staffing problems, then I want to invite you to sign up for a 30-minute free call with me to see if your organization is truly a fit to do this culture values assessment. And it might not be, and I'll tell you the truth, I've told some folks before that I've talked to about this, that their organization just is not ready for it. And I'll do the same for you. So here's what's going to happen next. If you sign up for your slot today, using that link in the comments, and we'll also email that link to you, I'll share with you a bonus tool that you can use to assess your recruitment process yourself. It'll walk you step by step through exactly what a candidate sees when they're thinking about coming to work for you. Excuse me. If you decide after 24 hours, I'd still love to talk to you, but that recruitment assessment tool will be gone. And by the way, organizations, people pay to be part of programs where we use this tool, and they pay $395 to be part of those programs. The other thing is when we do talk, I'll hear from you what you think is going on in your organization and share with you some ideas on how you can start to make it better that very same day. And now, because we haven't assessed your organization, I'll be sharing ideas that help in most organizations, but it won't be that deep step-by-step strategic approach like you get with me after a full values assessment. I'll hear about your organization, give you tips based on what I hear, but it's not going to be that real deep dive. And normally the minimum package for working with us at Drive is 6 calls, and we charge $1,800 for that 6-call package. But because you're committed your time today, I'll talk to you for those 30 minutes, give you my advice for free. And by the way, I've never done this before, and so who knows if I'll make that offer again, but I'm going to try it. And again, that link is below, and the faster you click on it, the more calendar availability you are going to see. And remember, when you sign up for a time slot today, we'll send you that extra bonus to assess your recruitment process. And so as we wrap up our time, I just want you to keep in mind that if cheap is your measure for solving your staffing issues, my advice is probably not going to be a good fit for what you want to do. I believe what you get paid for, and you get what you pay for, I should say. And at Drive, you're getting expertise for people who have worked in this field. And if you're looking for average, as I told you before, wrong place. We don't do average. You need more than average. But I suspect if you're still on this call, if you're still on this webinar, that you don't do average either. So I'm super excited to take some Q&A questions from the chat. I've seen the number of on the chat there, people I think asking who knows what they're saying, but it's been very tempting to click on it, but I've resisted temptation, and we're happy to take any questions at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to start at feeding you questions, Denise. So
Okay.
The first question is this. One of the big challenges is that when you look at the applicant pools, there are an awful lot of people who apply who don't really fit, who aren't qualified. What do you do about that?
So people that apply for jobs and are not qualified.
Yeah, or not a fit. So qualified fit may be the same thing, maybe not.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on a lot of things, on the job, on your organizational bit. So I'll give you an example. Maybe you have we see this sometimes, people have like whatever you want to call it, programs, kind of helping hand programs, or an uncertified caregiver, basically what it is. Someone who can, fill waters, make beds, assist residents, but not in a way that requires certification. Sometimes people have programs like that if someone comes in, they do well, they go into the certification route and they get them certified to become a certified nursing assistant. But sometimes those people aren't a good fit, right? They test this person out and it's not a good fit. So I would say that as an organization, we look at then, is that person a fit for something else, right? Would they make a great server in the dining room? Might be more fit for working in recreation and helping to transport people. I mean, who knows, right? So that might be one thing we want to look at, is sort of what is the job, and is there something else that we can do with this person if they're not a fit? Are we helping them grow? You saw my boys there. They're just turned 18, I told you. And they're still learning what it's like in the working world. We're going on vacation, and my son never told his boss he's going on vacation. Luckily, it's my brother-in-law, but they're still learning. So I think there's the opportunity. We might just say, oh, that young generation, they're lazy. But I kind of look at myself, gosh, I never sat down and had a talk. When you go on vacation, this is what you do. You put in advance notice. So maybe it's also the opportunity to groom some of these people that we're just writing off as not a fit. It would depend, I would say, on the situation. If it's truly not a fit, like they're real negative and constantly gossiping and stirring the pot all the time, and we've talked to them and they're not willing to change anything, then I would say that's something that a person that does not belong in our organization. And some of that could be the questions that you're asking upon hire too.
Okay, so Denise, you got to speed round these questions because there are a bunch of them. Okay, next one. When you talked about this organization, Roundtree, that had this massive improvement in turnover, what did they do? Retention bonuses, a new leader, or something else?
So for their process question, the retention bonuses.
What did they do to improve
it was not
retention?
financial. Yep. So not retention bonuses. Bonuses are rarely the answer to your problem. What they did is they were already a high-performing organization, but they were concerned about that 90-day turnover. So what they did is they became real intentional about the questions they were asking and about the type of person they wanted to recruit, and very intentional about sharing what kind of organization they were. So remember I told you about finding out about your organization. What we found out when we worked with them is people loved working with them because they were a faith-based organization, and people talked about it was almost a continuation of going to church. It's like a spiritual fulfillment working for them. They use that in their ads. They use that in on their postings, and even on when they talk to people and screen them over the phone, they told them about the type of organization and who fits best with them. And because of that, the people that were coming in for interviews were so much higher quality, but because they were able to target exactly who they were looking for instead of just throwing it out there and hoping somebody applies.
Great. Okay, next question. Difference between straight assisted living and dementia care. Dementia care is certainly a more difficult environment to working on. So do you see any difference in the data between the two levels?
So I don't know that I really have any true data. You know, the data in our field is not very good in general for recruitment or retention. So that's why the fight of what's average now, because there really hasn't been a national study done in a long time. And I don't know that I've actually seen it broken out for you know, care and support of people living with dementia. What I will tell you though is I want to encourage you that don't use that to fight the data. And so that can very easily, like, oh, we're different, we have harder care because we're caring for people with dementia, becomes, and I'm not saying that someone's trying to do this, but it becomes a little bit of an excuse. Like people say to me, oh, we're so rural, there's no one around here. Oh, we live in a city and there's 10 other places right around us. All of that is fighting the data. Take that and say that that's our reality. But what are the rewards of working with people with dementia? There are a ton of rewards. And so if that's your challenge, I would say find a great quote, find a great picture, and make that connection once again through the entire process. And that assessing your hiring process, that if you make an appointment today, we'll give you that tool. Honestly, when you go through that, you can look and say, does anywhere come across how rewarding this work really is? And not just like a little line about it, but truly does it come across as compelling that people want to work here?
Okay, next question. Difference in turnover rates between frontline staff and RNs and administrative staff.
You know what, I can send, how about this, we'll, it'll take a little bit longer, but we'll pull out a link with some data of the latest research, the last research that was done on a national level that talks about those things, if that would be helpful.
Perfect. Can you share the list of survey questions or the questionnaire?
The list of what questions, Steve?
That you use in the survey to determine what people's values, what the various values are.
Oh, those were the 3 questions that I showed earlier. Oh, so I'll pop them back up.
But when you actually ask the questions, they get a list of those things to look at though, right?
Oh, I'm so sorry. They get words so when they answer these questions, they get a list of words that they choose from. The neat thing about it is you can put words into it. So if you have some company values that you want to kind of test, you could put those words in there. But there's about 70 personal values they choose from, and there's about 120 or 130 organizational values.
Okay, so can you share that? Do you share that?
Yeah, I'll have to check on that. I don't know if it's a shareable information. Okay. So I'll have to check because I don't know that information. We use a third party to do it, so I'll have to check on that.
Okay, great. Okay, that one.
But you can add values in if there's a value that someone's wondering about. We've had people add things like celebration to it and so forth when the value wasn't in there already.
Oh, I love this question. How long does it take to change a company's culture enough so that staffing retention increases and turnover decreases?
Wonderful question, and I love that you're thinking about sustainability and not this quick fix, whoever asked that question. And so research shows that it takes between 5 and 7 years to completely change a culture. However, what we know, and you saw those 2 organizations there, that organizations that intentionally look at their culture, we're seeing fairly quick results. So 9 months, 1 year, that they're seeing an impact on their turnover, and that depending on how committed they are to it, right? You can get this data and do nothing with it, But if they really are using this approach where we get this data, we're using a strategic approach and acting on this, we create a plan, right? We help you create the strategic plan and for culture. And if you're acting on it, you're going to see those results. You won't obviously see the results if you do nothing with the information. But I would say we've seen organizations, even at 6 months, make little, start seeing smaller changes, and it just might be less agency usage, or it might be that the 90-day turnover is dropped a bit. So, you'll start seeing changes. It's not going to take 5 to 7 years to see the turnover decrease and the applicants increase.
So you had a couple questions. I'm sort of not doing this quite in order, but I think this is a question that a lot of people have, is how much impact does starting wages have on turnover and all of this?
Yeah, so I think that, it obviously has an impact, but I would say not as great as an impact as people think. I have been in focus group, and I've talked to probably tens of thousands of employees over all the years. I've been in organizations where people are paying the highest in their state, and the staff know it, and they have turnover, not the high turnover that other organizations do, but they still have higher than what you would think. And I've worked in organizations where the pay rate might be slightly below, but it's a culture where people want to be, and so people stay. So typically people aren't going to leave for 25 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour. I mean, I've seen people leave jobs and go back even when they were getting paid $1 more an hour, right? And so you got to think about this is a workforce where $1 an hour is making a huge difference, and I don't want to downplay that. So there is an impact on that, but it is not on the top reasons that people are leaving you. It is not, probably not pay. I mean, if you're like hugely different, perhaps, but when people say to me, oh, they left for 10 cents an hour, they told you they left for 10 cents an hour because they don't want to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, I know you've done some work in helping people design job ads to be able to attract the right people. Can you talk a little bit about what they say?
Yeah, they say what your organization is about. And so any of you can do this. We find out, we ask people through interviews, through focus groups, right? Why is it great to work here? What makes you proud to work here? And we pull out, and sometimes this is tough. And I just had this conversation actually with somebody yesterday. Sometimes this is tough when you're in the organization because you don't see what's special about it. But if we talk to those folks, we can pull out those threads of what makes it special. And I shared before the spiritual, right, for the faith-based organization. But we've had faith-based organizations where what's special, the thread that came out, why people work there, is because they're super innovative and people feel really empowered there, and their voice is heard and they can take a chance. Even though they're faith-based, that's what was drawing people there. And so their ads looked really different. There was quotes from a housekeeper about, I can't remember what's on my head, but about I'm truly listened to here when I speak up. They listened to me. We had a quote from one of the leaders there that said, it's like, yeah, it sounds like unicorns and rainbows working here, but it basically is. I mean, that's all like a very innovative approach. And so what their job ads look like, what their websites look like, are very different than what it is for the other organization that's, purpose-driven, right? Looking for that to continue giving back into the world and society is very different from that other one. But what I find, if you look online, go on in Indeed and look online at job ads, it's just like that all these organizations, just a commodity. They're all the same. All the job ads say the same thing, and there's nothing that makes them stand out. So when you ask the earlier question about how do we attract the right people and how do we weed out people that aren't a fit, part of what's going to happen is having those very specific job ads and then questions that match your values. All of that helps to get a better person in the door, which gets you someone who's going to be more engaged right from the very beginning. And then it's your job as a leader not to demotivate them, right? To keep them engaged.
Yep. Once somebody applies, do you have any thoughts on how to communicate with those people so they don't sort of fall out of the system, or to get them to actually then finish scheduling an interview?
Yes. Make it interesting and make them want to come back. So what we do is we, first of all, calling people. I told you my boys are 18. They don't even know what a cell phone call is, right? So text people, and some organizations are like, no, we can't. And then when we encourage them to do that, they find that their response rate goes way up. So people aren't looking at email, they're not answering the phone, and you can fight this and say, well, that's not somebody I want to hire. Well, guess what? Somebody else will, and they might be a great employee. So text, and there's a couple of different, I'm not going to get into it now, we've written blogs about it, but you can use free texting services to connect with people. Make it interesting and exciting, right? Imagine getting a little video like, Steve, can't wait to see you on Wednesday, you know, for orientation or whatever they're coming for. Maybe somebody referred them. Their friend maybe can meet them at the front door. Or, you know what, after we talk, Steve, you know what, Sheila's going to meet you for lunch. We're so happy she referred you to us, and we're going to treat you guys to lunch. So you can make it in a way that's exciting. And it should look like your organization looks. If your organization, once again, is innovative and forward-thinking, maybe what you're doing is a little bit kind of more risky, and you're showing that side of you. And if it's an organization that people are really, you know, tied to the spiritual side, and I just two examples off the top of my head. Sometimes organizations are really committed to learning, and that's what the staff love about them. It depends on your specific organization, but tie that into all your messaging, just like Apple does, right? Everything Apple does is clean lines and looks, you know, very slick. All their messaging looks like that, and so should yours.
And then if you measure, I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but let me try it with you. If you measure turnover and retention, do you use data specific to leadership evaluation? So I'm not sure I understand.
My guess is the question would be, if we did turnover, let's say we work in an organization, you and I, and we look at turnover. Am I looking how many people of Steve's have left and how many people of Denise's have left? That's how I'm interpreting that question. I don't know if that is indeed the question or not, but that might be the question at hand. So what I'll tell you is, the deeper that you dive into data, the more information you get, right? If you just do annualized turnover, you have a piece of the puzzle. By the way, a piece of the puzzle that most people don't have, believe it or not. You have one piece of the puzzle. If you look at the data and break it down by department, by hire dates, and all these other things, you get more and more information, and when you have more information, you can act on it.
Yeah. So one other question, I think I just got one more. So a couple of people have mentioned that if you're going to text, that you do have to make sure you have permission to text, and that should be part of your application process, so that you do have that permission for sure. Yeah. No question about that. So the other question is,
just kind of,
what's that?
It's kind of funny, the things we worry about, right? And we ask them permission to call them and email them and everything else, right?
Yeah. So the other question is you talked about sort of the turnover and how companies like Google and Disney are doing this amazing thing. Is it different in healthcare? I mean, there's sort of this sense that maybe the healthcare crisis is different than in other industry. Do you have thoughts on that?
I do. I think that there's organizations that are getting it right. And so what does that mean? That it's possible. And I think that we've done a really poor job of connecting purpose and showing how incredible it could be to work in this field to people. We kind of lately have been giving lip service to it because we're a lot more desperate. And so we finally are saying things about how it's purpose-driven work. But the other thing is, if you say it's purpose-driven work, it has to be purpose-driven work. You can't have somebody come and be like, oh, I can't wait to serve elders, and then all it is task. Steve, you just took 2 minutes to talk to Mary. You don't have 2 minutes to talk to Mary, right? It's got to be that we're supporting that. So do not sell them something that you as an organization aren't actually living, because those are the people that pop up on that 30-day turnover. They're going to go.
Great. So with that, we've worked all the way through the questions. Great presentation. Love what you're doing. Love this approach to figuring out what needs to be worked on and what are already high values. You know, we're great friends, and I know that you do amazing works, and you transform. You help organizations that want to transform to actually make that transformation happen. Yeah. And there's no higher calling than, because what you're really doing is changing people's lives and helping other people change lives of both seniors and team members, and that's really cool. So again, thank you very much. We will send out recordings, we will send out the slide deck, we will send out some goodies, and if you'd like to talk to Denise, jump on her calendar and set up some time to talk to her about how to better evaluate your organizations and figure out what the next steps are. So thank you very much for attending, everybody. Denise, thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Steve.
Alrighty, bye-bye.